Today I stole Metric's homework. I just straight up took parallel, kind of in a similar way to what we did with Venjent's track yesterday. And today we took it a step further. Instead of just looking at the stuff with the AI stem splitter, we actually tried to build it ourselves. So this is Parallel by Metric. It's a great piece of music. You should absolutely go check it out. This is kind of what the drop sounds like. And I've always felt like this was just such a good piece of music. There was just there's the drive of the drums, the details of the synths, well-made, good piece of music from top to bottom, 10 out of 10. And like I started today sitting down to work on the I Am Here Tonight track and just kind of feeling like, are my drums boring? Why do I not feel like my drums drive the way his drums drive? And so I said, well, let's just split it into stems and let's build the drums exactly with what we hear. So this is the drum stem that the AI pulled out of this track. And I did my best to, in about an hour, mostly with just sourcing samples from Splice, to build this exact groove. And this is what I came up with. The one thing that's happening is that really sets us apart is you can hear fragments of the other instruments slipping through. Like there's some rhythmics, some like rhythmic details there from the synths that are slipping through the AI's stem splitting. And it's creating this little extra bit of texture, so if you just ignore those and try to listen to what else is going on, I think this is actually pretty close. And that's kind of all that's happening. There's just this kick, which I did my best to pull his kick out and to just listen to just his kick there. But it also has this this crash happening. So ours is this. And his definitely has like a compression and like a kind of almost like a distortion, like it's a real chunkiness to the front that I could not seem to find in any sample I was grabbing, and I don't know what's creating that chunkiness to be able to manufacture it, but this drum and this crash were pretty close. And then the snare up here compared to his snare is a lot more real, a lot more alive, but relatively similar tuning as well. And then there's just the hi-hat, which has kind of like a large, kind of like more open, and then a more muted, more close. So we grabbed this guy and tuned it up to kind of be in a similar area. Very simple, very rudimentary. And if I'm being honest, when I listen to this in a vacuum, it's not that interesting. But I took like another 30 minutes to just build his synths, kind of a variation of his synths here, and with all the layers going at the same time, man, well, this is very much We Have Metric at Home, but it has that same sort of like chugging, like X Factor, like, oh, it makes me bop my head, even though all the sounds are much more boring and much more rudimentary than what he's got going on. The musical idea is there in a way that makes me groove. And the funny thing was, it was just an interesting lesson to learn. I was like, when I was like listening to his drums by themselves, I was like, well, that's actually not that interesting. I've always said that I feel like for drum and bass to really be good, the drums and the bass both need to be separate and independently of each other interesting. But his drums here are incredibly just functional. And if we compare it to Melancholy Groove, which is a thing that we made in a previous episode where I was just trying to make just the most interesting drum and bass drums I could, This is better. This is like that is a more interesting drum groove in my mind, just like objectively, than what he's got built, especially when you get into the back half of it. But what was wild to me was when I was like, let's just turn on my drums and the synths here and see what they sound like together. Like, it's not bad, but I would say that his drums are absolutely better. Like, that's exactly the right sound for this type of groove. So it was interesting that like the more independently interesting drums, I think stylistically were just the wrong choice for the style of music, and the more just not, it's like for what I would say this is like the drum and bass equivalent of 4 on the Floor. It's just like the most basic of grooves, but man does it work, especially his little turnarounds here. I think his turnaround here, I'm gonna definitely steal this rhythm. This like it's not complicated at all, but it's really, really effective at driving rhythm there. I think the main thing I learned here was that like if your synths and the musical idea you have going over the top of your groove is good, the groove will feel like it grooves better. Though I will say the sample choice here I think is really good. Like trying to match his samples directly, I don't know, I feel like maybe I just sometimes choose samples that are a lot more muted. I don't know, that is just kind of a different sound, but I mean, I do love that. There's not even any side chaining happening here, and it just punches through. I honestly might bounce these drums with these samples and just like, I don't know, just like straight up steal his drums and see if I can make something on my own that goes really well with this groove. So yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to take ideas from better producers than me and seeing if we can learn from them. That's all we did today. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.